Shoket is here today. She was at Cosmo Girl. She was the editor-in-chief of 17 magazine. She is an author. She wrote a book called The Big Life, which is for millennial women and thinking about how you plot your course in life and how you put your best foot forward. She's the founder of New Power Media, which is all about content and community, which One Love cares a lot about as well. She's really focused on women and next generational leadership. She's now the owner of The List, which is a membership group for women, a women's networking group. And I'd love for her to talk a little bit about why that made sense for her and what she hopes can become of that network. First of all, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, first of all, everybody, for having me here tonight. I know that there are plenty of other things that you could be doing with your time. The time I spend with One Love is always incredibly valuable. At NYU, I thought I was gonna write novels. I went and I got a degree. I have a major in English literature and a specialty in creative writing. I weirdly have a minor in political science and I got a degree in Latin. But what I don't know still to this day is how I thought that was a career. What is a job? And so the sort of next adjacent thing was magazines. But when I got out of college, much like you, when you got out of college, we were having a recession and there were like no jobs, frantically sending out applications. And I got a job at the American Lawyer magazine of all places and took it. And I was like, great, I got a job. That was it. But I learned how to become a really good reporter. That is one of the skills that I still to this day rely on those reporter skills. Asking questions in a way that people give you an answer is life skills that to this day, I use it all the time. Then from the American Lawyer, I went to a teen news magazine to write about legal issues for teenagers. So that was my bridge over there. But I really love talking to teenagers. I really felt like that moment in your life where you're becoming the person that you're meant to be was such a rich space and so much complicated emotions and feelings, and all of that really got me excited. So then from Cosmo Girl, became editor-in-chief of 17. 17 was an amazing experience. I loved every minute. After I left, I felt like I still had something to say. You are game-changing rock star pioneers who are changing what it means to be powerful and successful in the world. And so I decided to say that. I wrote the book, The Big Life, right? The Big Life is a guide for millennial women who see the world differently than the generation that came before them. Not interested in the straight ladder up, not interested in sitting still and paying your dues, not interested in being called entitled, all of those terrible things that we say about millennials. I loved the experience of writing the book so much. I traveled across the country 3 or 4 years, frankly, giving speeches to young women about their power and possibility in the world. By 2019, I felt like everybody, young women, millennial women, knew they were game-changing rock star pioneers. And they were like, so yeah, what can you do for me? Launched New Power Media to connect next generation of leaders with the companies that want to see them rise. That business was launched in December 2019. And so then 3 months later, right as I had lots of big sponsors on the hook, we decided to have a pandemic. So we spent a couple of months staring at the wall and trying to get my kids. I don't even know. What did I try? I tried to get my kids just.
You were just surviving, basically.
Honestly, I can't even remember. I can't even remember. It was so bad. But over the summer, we learned, as a human beings. So I acquired The List. I had a young women's community of about 10,000 women called the Badass Babes. They are the pioneers. They are talking about power that is diverse and flexible and transparent and accountable. Next in the evolution is to really fill out this pipeline from early and middle career through to senior leadership, and to figure out how to bridge that gulf so that we really have created an ecosystem of new power.
How do you build bridges around generations, and how do you also create environments that welcome diverse membership in?
When we talk about diversity now, we're talking about power and influence being different, right? We're talking about equity and inclusion and being heard and being seen for who you are, not having to fit into somebody else's idea, a box of what power looks like.
But what did you learn during your career about what really gave you oxygen?
What gives me oxygen is conversations with women, feeling seen and heard, and that you're not alone, or that there's amazing possibility in the world. That's what really gives me oxygen, is like being in conversation with amazing women, knowing that you're being heard.
What is the thing you wish you sort of had perspective on that you didn't, that you want to share with folks?
That the people and the relationships that you're investing in are the people and relationships that you are going to know all the way through your career. You're building like a real relationship, and you frankly have time to invest in those relationships, to be in each other's company. And when you're in a big company, building your network is just sort of part of the job, right? Like, you know who to call, the video guy is in the building, and who's in the marketing. Like, you sort of come with relationships. And I had to work harder to build those relationships and really invest in the people I wanted to be in business with and wanted to have in my network.
The question I want to ask you is, like, how did your identity shift when you left that quote unquote big job?
If I look around and I know there's something that has to be said and that nobody else is saying it or doing it, I feel like if I can step into that space because I know it's something that has to be said, then that's my responsibility to do so.
When you think of why those opportunities opened up to you over time, what were the things you did every day, or how did you show up every day that meant that, you were the person people looked to for that spot?
It's one foot in front of the other, right? Like, you just have to keep moving. That's part of my philosophy, is to like, how can I step into new territory and figure it out? Be fearless, try everything, and don't plan too much. And that's it's a quote that I said, try everything. If it doesn't work, it's not your thing, it's not your jam, great, don't do it. And don't plan too much, because if you plan too much, you'll miss like the fun along the way.
What made you know it was time to move on from a job or an opportunity?
I think it's if I've pushed harder and I've tried everything and it's not working. That's how I know it's time to move on, or to find something else, or to evolve.
Just how you found the One Love Foundation.
I covered Yardley Love's story when I was at 17. It always stuck with me. And it is and was a powerful story. The work I was doing, other work at 17 around relationship violence or toxic relationships. It was also very important because I was at 17, and because that's the moment when young women learn about what is a good relationship. I mean, for the first time, we had digital abuse, right? We were talking about digital abuse, and that couldn't have existed before. And I am so profoundly aware how the relationships around you can set you up for success or sabotage you. And knowing you're worthy of love, and how does that love express itself, it's just so crucial, especially when you're developing your sense of who you are. And that really speaks to me. But I'm just so acutely aware of how crucial the work is that you do.
We need people that are committed to next generation, that are committed to women, that are committed to starting conversations other people won't have. And I think you're perfect on that front.
I actually really love that One Love talks about healthy relationships and doesn't frame it as abusive relationships or unhealthy, doesn't come at it from the unhealthy point of view. I think that the idea of talking about healthy relationships is just so special.
I'm a little curious to hear. I know that you're, or at least you spoke about being like really motivated by the millennial generation, and you empower next generations. So like, can you talk a little bit about the work that you're focusing on now, maybe with like Gen Z or like younger generations that I guess are kind of like right below our generation in this group probably?
One of the great things about having been at 17 is that there was this amazing group of women who started their career with me, and those women are now the leaders for Gen Z. And I reach out to them all the time, right? I'm like, hey, like, what are you working on? How's it going? Like, I've got a project. Can we work on this thing together? But they're really the ones who are like deeply immersed in what's happening now with the next generation, and the recession in particular, 9/11, coronavirus. Like, this whole thing is going to be so transformative on the other side. My kids who are young are like, we're going to be Generation C. I was like, you probably are, right? Like, this whole last year has been so different, but the ways in which Gen Z has really like come to the forefront in the last year with the activism has been so inspiring, right? Really special. The skills that I learned as a journalist are the skills that carry me through in every single part of my life, but also to ask, like, to ask the question, like, why? What are the things that are shaping this generation? Why are they reacting this way? What's the help that they need? What are the changes that we can celebrate, right? Like, it's funny you say this because about millennials. I do love millennial women, but when I was in my 20s, I really loved Gen X women. I wrote letters. My first job letters were all about how I wanted to work on stories that didn't abandon Gen X to like the slacker stereotype, right? Because that's how we were viewed. But like the problem was we weren't slackers, just like you're not entitled. We weren't slackers. There were no jobs. The best you could do was work at a coffee shop. You weren't just working at a coffee shop because you were waiting for your trust fund to like open up, right? It was like there were no jobs. So I felt the same way about millennials, right? It's like, not that you were entitled, it's that the jobs just sucked and you were like, I'm just gonna do it myself with a couple of friends and we'll figure it out on our own as we go. I'd rather, and frankly, like everybody was getting laid off anyways, so like why not just take a bet on yourself? I'm very interested in the cultural moments that shape a generation, but also like, what do you need next? How can we talk about your wellness, about your health, about your ambition?
I don't know if you agree with this, but a lot of the mainstream dialogue is really about, it's very white centered, right? So it's like, how do you actually think more broadly and make room? And I think that's a whole, I don't even know how to do that really. Like, I mean, except say that we need to figure it out. That's what this generation is actually going to quote unquote force in a good way.
I think it's interesting to me coming from the media, like media has been so slow to respond. Don't try to convince anybody. Old media has been really slow to respond to diversity and bringing in other points of view. And so women of color are like, fine, we don't need you. Like, we're just gonna start our own thing. And it'll be something else. I don't know. Yes, I agree with you. It's still very white centered.
And it was really interesting to hear you talk about like your empowerment groups, like kind of outside of the workplace. And I was curious, I think like historically it's been harder for women in the workplace. They've had to kind of like earn their role, and sometimes they don't necessarily support or empower other women. So I was curious, like, if that's ever been your experience in any kind of workplace and how you maybe actively try to support and like advocate like other women.
You see that among your friends, that women, the women that you work, that they feel like they're not supportive of each other, or do you just feel like it's the women who are more senior?
I actually think it might happen more so like at a lower level when you're first starting a job and you're like, I want to get up in the ranks and I want to get noticed, and like you don't realize that maybe you're kind of like keeping other people like at an arm's length because you want to like become successful.
Right before the pandemic hit, the Wall Street Journal had interviewed me for a story about competition between generations of women in the workplace. We didn't have time or space to like fight with each other anymore about it. Like, we all just had to help each other survive this year. I really hope that on the other side actually come back to work with a different perspective. I think this year has just been like a total change for the ways in which people interact with each other and how we support each other. I never really had a tribe of women who were so supportive. There were a couple. I didn't have a network that I felt like I could really tap into. And frankly, like in the magazine business, it was pretty cutthroat. Look, we were competitive. Everybody wanted the pats on the head and the notice from the boss, and we were competitive in that way. I actually think that the key to success will be the ways in which millennial women are setting the tone by supporting each other. So much of this like idea of sisterhood, the modern idea of sisterhood, has really come from millennial women in the ways that you have bonded together with other women to help each other achieve and succeed. When I'm giving corporate speeches, what I say to millennials is, do not see this person as an obstacle, see them as a window. That person has been in rooms you've never been in before, and even if they are driving you nuts, there are things that you can learn from them. And I say the exact same thing to more senior management. I say, let your millennial employees fuel your ambition to make change. If you ask them to sit still and do things the way they've always been done, you will lose them. But if you support their ambitions and their dreams and use that to fuel your own next act, that will be an amazing partnership.
Well, I just want to thank you, Anne. This was awesome. And thank you guys all for being here tonight. I'm so grateful that you stand strong with the work we're trying to do at One Love, but you can do that and still not give as generously of your time as to come here tonight and be here with some of our community. So I just want to thank you for that.
Just know that I am like fully on board for how can I help One Love.
Thank you so much. This was so insightful.
Sit in your own seat. Practice sitting in your own seat.